Once again, market is in free fall. U.S. stocks tumble as Trump again rips Federal Reserve chair. Let's take a look.
Breaking news on Wall Street with stocks tumbling right now. All three indices showing sharp declines today. Let's go live to CNN business and politics correspondent Vanessa Yurkevich. Vanessa, walk us through what's behind this decline.
Well, markets opened rattled this morning because Beijing was essentially putting pressure on their trading partners not to work with the U.S. On essentially not trading with China any longer. And then after that, there was a Truth Social post by President Trump that came out, which sort of rattled markets again. And that's why you're seeing that steep decline. The Dow down 1,100 points now. But you can see the post right there. Where
Wow. Oh God, wait.
Dow down 1,100 points.
Is that good? Hey, when the business like financial analyst correspondent says wow while reading the latest data in real time, is that a sign of good things to come? Is that a sign of the best is yet to come? You're gonna keep winning. You're going to keep winning. You're going to win so much. You're going to say, please, Mr. President, we've won too much. And I'm going to say, no, you're going to win more. Please, Mr. President, we are tired of winning. I'm going to say, no. You're gonna win more.
Now, but you can see the post right there where he's essentially calling on the Federal Reserve to cut rates. This is something that the president really has no power doing. And when he talks about Mr. Too Late, he's talking about the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell. Over the last week or so, he's really ratcheted up his pressure on the Fed chair, essentially calling for his termination, saying if I could terminate him at some point, I will. The president appointed Jerome Powell in his first term. President Biden re-upped him for his second term. And ultimately, President Trump there, though, saying that he has the power to remove the Fed chair, Jerome Powell. But that is not necessarily the case here. And there's some legal precedent for that says that the president does not have the authority to remove the chair of the Federal Reserve unless there are three sort of different qualifications: inefficiency, neglect of duty, malfeasance of office. So that is why there's so much question about whether or not the president has the power to make this move. But this is why you see markets rattled right now, because the Federal Reserve is an independent body from the government, and it acts sort of as a safety net for the U.S. economy. And when you have the president threatening to remove the Federal Reserve chair or trying to direct the Federal Reserve to make any sort of monetary policy, that rattles investors and traders who see this Federal Reserve Bank as sort of an independent catch-all for potential issues with the economy. And one of those issues, Boris, as you know, that is playing out right now is this global trade war. Many economists believe that this trade war, as it escalates, will increase prices for everyday consumers. And the Federal Reserve really is the sort of counteractive in that, the body that can help try to bring down prices if that were to happen. So traders, investors nervous about this language that they're seeing from the president right now. The next time the Fed will meet is in May, and that is when they will make that policy decision about interest rates. But it is up to the Federal Reserve. It is not up to the President of the United States to make those directives.
We're joined now by Joe Weisenthal. He's the co-host of Bloomberg's Odd Lots podcast. Joe, thanks for being with us. Let's start on how
motherfuckers going on every broadcast except for mine, you know?
Markets have responded to this spat with
he looks like he
Powell.
got older.
You actually posed the question
in the past week. Am I crazy? I feel like we watched him last week. He looked. He's getting hit with the Obama ray
of what Trump would get from firing him. Isn't the answer that simply he would get a Fed chair who would do what he says, a more subservient Fed chair?
He might. And that's probably what he has in mind if you were to go through with firing him. But the point that I want to make, and the point that I think maybe markets are reflecting is, okay, you could imagine Powell being replaced by someone who is quicker to lower rates at signs of volatility or quicker to lower rates at signs of economic slowdown. But the investors and markets, their fear about inflation, their fear about the short-term inflation due to tariffs. They're concerned about, sort of long-term rise in inflation expectations. And there's the risk, and there's the very real possibility that even if you got a Fed chair who was willing to push through, and bear in mind, there's 12 members of the FOMC, so you can't unilaterally push through lower rates. Even if you got a Fed chair who was able to immediately push through lower rates, that might be seen as more inflationary. And then the market might think, okay, well, now we have to raise rates further and harder into the future. And that's how you get the rates at the long end. And those rates at the long end, say a 10-year yield, that's what your mortgage is priced off of, something like that. So even getting in like a true lackey wouldn't necessarily stimulate the economy in perhaps the way that Trump is imagining. What it would do, though, is weaken the expectation that the U.S. has an independent central bank, which is sort of like one of the foundational elements of global macroeconomic policy.
Yeah, I do want to get your thoughts on where we are in the U.S. trade war with China. It seems the Trump administration is still waiting for a call from President Xi that they suggested he should make like a month ago.
I mean, even setting aside China, so obviously about a week after Liberation Day, actually, I think it was exactly a week, they sort of dialed back the tariffs on the non-China world. And they're like, all right, these are going to be down to 10% for 90 days. We're not even getting those deals.
Please call me. Xi, you used to call me on my cell phone. You up? Xi, look at this photo of us together. We used to be together. Xi, remember when I showed you a video of my granddaughter speaking in fluent Mandarin and you said her eyesight is on the future? At that moment, I realized maybe you were talking about a century of Chinese prosperity. I did not understand it. Xi, please call me. Remember the good times we had together. Top Xi. We will be the ones to call you first, but that call won't be between the U.S. and China. It will be a call between China and the world. Our message is that we are the adults in the room. We represent stability. Trump will celebrate it as a victory and that China capitulated, but the world will know the truth. Sorry to the average American, but our call will only happen once the pain really sets in. Listen, motherfucker, if you're going to come in here and talk like this, don't literally plagiarize my takes verbatim, okay? I like when you come up with cool new ways of saying I'm actually a secret Turk who wants to be Chinese but will never be Chinese, all that stuff. This is bar for bar what I said, okay? That's crazy.
Trade deal with Japan, which is a longtime trading partner, an ally, that should be a gimme, right? It shouldn't be particularly hard. You could imagine, say, something where Japan agrees to buy, more soybeans or liquid natural gas or something like that. We're not even getting that right now. And the messages that I've seen in various reporting says that's going to be a...
There are some reports here that the U.S. trying to force their shit food standards on the EU and the negotiations are just dead because it's not going to happen. Dude, I said that. I said that in order to make up for the trade deficit, what are the things that we have at our disposal that we could actually sell to Europe? Meat and poultry. And in order for us to be able to sell meat and poultry into the European markets, they have to lower their food regulation standards, their safety standards. So this is a way to try and force other countries and their own sovereignty, their own internal regulatory agencies. It's not enough that we are fucking up our own federal regulatory agencies. We must ruin other countries' regulatory agencies as well. It is crazy. It is crazy. It is no different functionally than demanding that Barcelona get turned into a fucking parking lot, okay? Demanding that every European city has to make way for large American vehicles, that we will not actually change our safety inspection standards or the engine size of American cars that we produce for the European markets. We will not do that. You will open up your streets. It's fucking insane. It's an insane thing to do. It's an insane thing to demand. It is so ridiculous. Yeah. I wonder why the FDA I wonder why the deal's not going through. Breaking. FDA is planning to end most of its routine food safety inspections, and they're going to localize them. Yeah, they're going to outsource this oversight to state and local authorities.
Slug. So then think that's Japan. And then you have to think, okay, then there's the EU and Korea and everyone else. And all this is before you even get to China. So I think people are looking at the fact that, you know, there is this clock that's ticking, and we're not even getting what should be the easy.
China warns countries not to strike trade deals with the U.S. at its expense. China Ministry of Commerce says appeasing the Trump administration cannot bring peace. China has warned countries seeking exemptions from the United States President Donald Trump tariffs not to strike deals at its expense. Beijing's warnings come as dozens of U.S. trade partners are scrambling to negotiate relief from Trump trade salvos, including steep reciprocal tariffs that have been paused until July. Appeasement cannot bring peace, and compromise will not earn respect, a spokesperson for China Ministry of Commerce said on Monday. Sacrificing others' interests to obtain so-called exemptions for temporary selfish gains is akin to negotiating with a tiger. It ultimately, dude, what is up with the Chinese, man? Everything sounds like a fucking Sun Tzu. Every time I hear from a Chinese netizen, it sounds poetic. Every time I hear from the Chinese foreign ministry, it sounds bar for bar like Sun Tzu. Is this normal? Is this how I don't get it? Is this just how the language works? What is this? It's all idioms across the board. Sacrificing others' interests to obtain so-called exemptions for temporary selfish gains is akin to negotiating with a tiger. It ultimately leads to failure for both parties and harms everyone involved. While China respects countries' efforts to resolve their trade disputes with the U.S., they should also stand on the side of fairness and justice and on the correct side of history. It is particularly important to emphasize that China firmly opposes any party achieving deals at the expense of Chinese interests. Should such a situation arise, China will not accept it and will resolutely take reciprocal countermeasures. This is one of the first instances where I've seen the Chinese government actually take a threatening stance when it comes to trade negotiations or anything, really. This is a more threatening stance than anything else that I've heard from the Chinese side thus far. Like saying that if you were to cut deals with the Trump administration and ruin your trade relationship with China in the process, because some of those demands are going to be to not work with China, because America's goal here is to literally decouple all global trade from China as a manufacturing hub, or maybe even potentially the secondary markets that China uses, or secondary manufacturing hubs that China uses. And if that's the case, then they will also retaliate. Now, America retaliating against the world in a belligerent manner is one thing. The ministry issued the statement after Bloomberg News last week reported that the Trump administration intends to push countries seeking relief from its tariffs to reduce their trade with China. U.S. officials are discussing plans to pressure trade partners to stop importing excess goods from China and impose duties on imports from specific countries with those close ties to the Asian giant. Yeah, this is America utilizing what remains, or what it thinks it has of its what it thinks it has of its global prominence and influence, which I think to a certain degree America has eroded a lot of that goodwill and a lot of that domination, especially in the last couple of decades. it thinks it can basically fucking bully everybody to also adding tariffs to China. Like, no more Chinese goods entering your markets. Also, you must deregulate your markets. You must deregulate your own. You must no longer have any sovereignty whatsoever, and you must engage in deregulation across the board so that you can allow American goods to flow into your country.
Trade deals are the natural.
By the way, this is something important to understand here is the difference between China and America in this process. China looked to the interest around the globe. They recognized that technology was moving in the direction of batteries and that there was going to be great need for renewable energy in the future, partially because if China were to become anything beyond just the industrial engine, but like a consumer economy or an economy that, or a country that consumes as much as America does, it would collapse climate. It would destroy everything. The world would no longer exist. And therefore, they focused on beefing up their renewable energy sector. In the process, they started making electric vehicles, seeing that there was great appetite for electric vehicles in all of the global markets. But they didn't make electric vehicles on what they think, what the domestic Chinese market's demands were, and with no consideration to what the international markets were looking for. They made electric vehicles, or rather, their regulatory, their own safety measures and their own cars that they were selling domestically were also. They also abide by standards and needs that the international markets had, as opposed to in the United States of America, where our top-selling car is an F-150, and that it is not something you can sell to the European markets. You just can't do it. That is the big difference here. China makes products that people want to purchase. America wants to use its domineering influence around the globe to forcibly sell our products to you. That's it. Make better products and people will purchase it. And if you want those products to be affordable, okay, if you want the cost of said products to be competitive with the other country's domestic manufacturing, then subsidize the fuck out of it, which we already do. But don't let those subsidies go back to the pockets of CEOs. But instead, make sure that those subsidies go to your workers. This F-150 Canard again, we make small cars too. I know. Okay, I know we make other types of cars as well. I know. I mean, you have the Ford Fiesta, for example. Counterpoint China bad. Respond to my critique. Potato Enjoyer 420. You are correct. My mistake. I fucked up.
Natural trade deals that you'd want to imagine if we were going to sort of build this, global trading bloc excluding China. And so, every day that this goes on, there is damage theoretically, or people perceive there to be damage to the economy that's not easily reversed. It also shows that, the longer it goes on without some sort of reversal, that the market is not, that the White House is not particularly sensitive to market declines for the pace of policy.
Joe Weisenthal, very much appreciate the perspective. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, every 20-year-old had a Ford Fiesta from 1999 to 2013 in Spain. Ford Fiesta discontinued in 2018. And yeah, America's best-selling small cars aren't even small by European standards. That's the other thing.
Thanks for having me.
Well, they clearly...
At this stage, we do not make, at this stage, American manufacturers do not make any fucking small or mid-sized cars at this point. It's all just ginormous tanks.
Don't like the uncertainty that all of this is causing, right? And we're seeing this play out with foreign investors pulling out and more investment in foreign stocks and that kind of thing. So we're going to keep tracking this for sure. Vanessa Yurkevich, thank you so much. And joining us now is Republican Congressman Carlos Jimenez. Congressman, I want to get your take on what's happening with the markets. Should President Trump stop his attacks on the Fed Chair, Jerome Powell?
Well, I'm not going to tell the president what to do.
The EV thing is especially true. They're adapting, but not super quickly. Most of the best EVs are still aimed at Chinese middle-class buyers that have chauffeurs, which most European customers don't need. They try to push different battery swap technology that didn't take on as quickly because they massively underestimated the cost. Another funny thing about it is that China also buys a lot of cars. China also will still continue to import a lot of cars, right? And ironically enough, European car manufacturers, as a matter of fact, manufacture different kinds of cars for the Chinese market because foreign cars in China are obviously more expensive than the domestically produced cars. And therefore, most of the people that buy those foreign cars are purchasing more expensive versions of said cars. So they actually have longer versions of the same fucking vehicles that they sell everywhere else. So even Europeans and even Americans, as a matter of fact, when they manufacture for the Chinese market, will manufacture to Chinese needs. They don't want to do that everywhere else for some weird fucking reason. By the middle class and upper middle class statement that the chatter made is correct. A lot of upper middle class Chinese people will purchase longer versions of those cars so that there's more leg room in the back because they're oftentimes being chauffeured. Like they get those kinds of sedans, like 4-door sedans, for to be driven around in.
Look, I've been on your show before, and I said that this is the result of resetting commerce with the United States of America, and so we've been used to commerce being one way, where people put tariffs on us, but not so much us putting tariffs on them. The president's just trying to reestablish a new reality, a new norm, and when that happens, you're going to have waves, and you're going to have the market go up and down until this all settles out. And so I still have confidence in what the president is doing.
GM had an EU-only brand, I believe, called Opel. You mean Opel? Opel.
He is trying to make commerce and trade fair for America, which has been historically unfair to America. And again, it's going to cause ripples. And so again, I think we just need to write it out.
So there's the issue of the tariff policies, but then there's the separate issue of President
Opel Corsa, Toyota Corona.
Trump bashing the Fed chairman repeatedly. Clearly, he wants him to lower interest rates. That's something that he is not indicated.
I wanted to see if there's any Turks in the chat, but I guess no. Opel fena değil aslında ya. Okay, see, there's some Turks in here. Yes, I grew up in Turkey where we have Opel, we have Renault, Peugeot, and cars like that. Skoda. Opel is not Turkish law. I know, dude. Opel Corsa, Toyota'da Corona. Ben çok yaşlandım ondan. 33 yaşında adamım abi. Bizim böyle şakalarımız vardı. Böyle şeyler söylerdik. Ben büyürken. Bu da eski shitpost. İngiliz köpeği, İngiliz uşağı.
He's going to do right now, and the Fed chair has obviously been, speaking out about the trade policy and the impact it can have on the economy. Do you think that the president can fire the Fed chair?
I don't know, and so I guess if he does, I guess we'll figure it out. I mean, there's uncertainty even with your reporter. There is doubt whether he can or he can't. So I really don't know if he can or he can't. If he can, then the Fed has never really been independent, because I'm sure the chairman knows whether the president can fire him or not. And so we'll find that out if it happens. I hope it doesn't get to that, and I hope that they can resolve their differences.
Right, because the law in the book says that the Fed chair can be fired for cause, right? And that's really the big point. And the reason that there's independence, as she laid out, is for investors to know that something's not going to happen just because of a presidential policy.
Also, this President Trump is warning countries against cheating to get around his tariffs. But China may be taking steps to interfere with trade talks between the.
Bro, what do you mean? Like, America is telling other countries not to work with China. And then China is saying, hey, don't do that. Oh my God, you guys, my 2-year-old is going to be so jealous. Oh my God. Miss Rachel followed? That's crazy. That's crazy. This is the greatest follow of all time, dude. What's the expectation from China to just like quietly sit by and get fucking and allow America to destroy global trade? How dare they? How fucking dare they, dude? How dare they? That is not allowed, you see? I can't believe you would want to not allow America to nuke global trade in its entirety for no real reason.
The U.S. and other nations. What is going on? Grady Trimble of Fox Business live at the White House. Hey, Grady.
Hey, good morning, Dana. China says that if the U.S. makes any deals at the expense of China, then it's going to, quote, take countermeasures in a reciprocal manner. And some experts are warning that Beijing could try to strike deals with European countries, for example, that are too good for those countries to refuse at the expense of the United States. But President Trump doesn't seem deterred from his plan, posting on Truth Social about the countries trying to reach agreements with his administration, saying, "It's good to see that the world knows we are serious, because we are. They must right the wrongs of decades of abuse, but it won't be easy for them. But for those who want the easiest path, come to America and build in America."
I got a readout from Jameson Greer yesterday, and it looks like we're north of 15 now of legitimate, serious offers on the table. The thing I could say you could look for is that when we think a deal's really, really close, then my expectation is the president's going to want to meet with that world leader here in the White House in order to close the deal.
So we will be paying very close attention to which world leaders are coming to the White House in the not too distant future. And here's what the Trump administration is trying to address, or at least cut into: a $300 billion trade deficit with China. Administration officials say despite that number, the U.S. actually has the upper hand.
China imports 11.5 million barrels of oil a day.
I hate to see my goat, Doug Burgum, in this shitty position, having to defend the Trump administration's incompetence, you know? This man sold software to Microsoft and became a billionaire. And look at him now. This beautiful man with his beautiful eyebrows. He has to fucking sit around and defend the dumbest, most incompetent baboon in America.
They import about 25% of the calories they consume every
Burgomaniacs rise up. Doug Burzum.
Every day. And so when we think about the U.S. and us as being a superpower, we're an energy superpower, we're a food superpower, and China is highly dependent.
And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who has been one of the leads in negotiating these new trade deals, he's meeting with his South Korean counterpart this week, I believe, here at the White House. So the wheeling and dealing continues despite these new warnings from China. Dana?
Grady, thank you so much.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe.
冲击不会太大，因为我们的市场海湾市场没有那么单一。
今天有接到俄罗斯这边的话11万，欧盟的话有5万，中东那边的话有10万。
那我们就开始呢，有一些订单呢不划算的，我们就暂停，就不接了，就开始转向自己的国内市场了。
除了像传统的美国和欧洲市场之外，我们跟50多个国家地区都有业务上的来往。我们还有自己的设计和研发团队，我们手上有21项的专利。那 如果客人想找到像我们这样实力强劲的替代者，那这个是他们需要去解决的问题。所以这个问题不是我们，而在于客人。
目前来说，就是可能关税升级以后，可能会有点影响，但是我们其实也提早做了准备了，因为我们其实现在平台比较多，对吧？然后比方说像国内的话有18个天猫店，外贸的话像关联的国际站，相当于有30多个平台，其实订单相对来说还是比较趋于稳定。
我们一定要走出来，把这个服装面料演变成服装，跟我们的中国的这一些大型服装厂也好，或者线上的这一些我们叫网红也好，跟他们做一些配套，只能往上升级去做自己的产业链的配套。
当前，国际社
China warns against provocations over Taiwan. Those who play with fire will get burned.
会面临
The international community.
保护主义。
Wait, hold on. The international community is currently facing the impacts of unilateralism, protectionism, and bullying, and hegemonism. Countries in this region are eager to strengthen solidarity and cooperation, jointly safeguard regional stability, and work together to tackle challenges. Against this broad backdrop, the Philippines, in collusion with extraterritorial, is engaging in large-scale military exercises and introducing and deploying strategic and tactical weapons. Such actions undermine regional strategic stability and the prospects for economic growth in the region. They openly stand in opposition to the countries of this region and have already triggered strong resentment and opposition from regional nations. The Taiwan question is purely China's internal affair and lies at the very core of China's core interests. China firmly opposes any country using the Taiwan question as a pretext to strengthen regional military deployments, provoke tension and confrontation, and undermine regional peace and stability. We urge the relevant parties not to provoke on the Taiwan question. Those who play with fire will eventually get burned. And those who play with boats will eventually get splashed with the Chinese Coast Guard. Hasan, please go to China before the war. There is no, that's ridiculous. All right. Funny how America created the capital system and spread it around the world, and then as soon as a big enough competitor themselves comes along, they whinge and moan about it and lash out. Yes, I know Mandarin, chat. That's right. Get ready to learn Chinese, buddy, is what they said. One of your latest China Reacts is doing great on Bilibili. What is this?